Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist, where we teach you political lessons from the purple state of New Hampshire so you can advocate for liberty no matter where you live. I am Melissa Blasek. I'm the current executive director and grassroots lobbyist for an organization called Rebuild NH, and I am a former New Hampshire state representative. We are going to have on a state representative I've been trying to get on my show for a while. She is a personal friend of mine and a star Rebuild NH legislator. She has sponsored a tremendous amount of our legislation, even efforts that I myself had championed when I was in the House, and she picked it up after I was gone and carried it through to the finish line. So she's always a hero in my book for that. We're going to have Representative Kristin Noble on, Chair of House Education, to talk about all things education. But before we do that, when credible doctors start paying attention to repurposed medications, it's worth asking why. Dr. Harvey Reish, former professor of epidemiology at Yale and now serving on the president's cancer panel, is helping lead that conversation. A new groundbreaking observational study from the wellness company analyzed the off-label use of ivermectin and mebendazole in nearly 200 cancer patients treated by licensed doctors across cancers like breast, prostate, lung, and colon, and the results were hard to ignore. After 6 months, 84% of patients experienced clinical benefit, including stable disease, tumor regression, and no evidence of disease. This is not lab data. This is real-world patient experience. Dr. Harvey Reish, chief epidemiologist at the wellness company, called it an exciting signal deserving serious scientific investigation and more accessible, low-cost cancer options. That is why the wellness company makes it easy to access ivermectin plus mebendazole formula using medications that are FDA approved for other indications and are being studied for additional use. It is doctor prescribed and USA compounded, designed to support patients exploring these emerging approaches under medical guidance. Ordering is simple and fully digital. Just fill out a quick intake form, a licensed doctor reviews it. Your prescription ships directly to your door. Head to dailyclouthealth.com and use code dailyclout to save up to $60 off plus free shipping. I have some good news to report. HB 1448, which I have talked about quite a bit on this particular show, has been passed into law. Well, what bill is that? And what does pass into law mean versus being signed into law? We'll get into that. So this is the bill that I've talked about quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit, but I've mentioned it a few times, to ban any education curriculum that was created by the World Economic Forum from being purchased or implemented in the state of New Hampshire. I got to tell you, folks, if you are in one of 49 other states, World Economic Forum curriculum is coming to a school near you. A year ago, I listened to a speech by AFT, American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten, where she announced that she was intending to partner with the World Economic Forum to create education curriculum, to create workers of the world, which certainly has quite a historical connotation that I found a little horrifying. The weird part was it felt like I was the only one who listened to that speech. And I thought, well, and as I always do, I hear a problem and I try to brainstorm a solution. And so I came up with this idea for this bill, and I wrote it out and I shopped it around quite a bit. And I just couldn't find anyone willing to really take it on and sponsor it. And then I finally found one person, and he did submit the bill. And right after he submitted the bill, I don't want to go into any details, but he kind of dropped off the face of the planet. I don't think he ever attended another committee hearing, session, or anything like that ever again. And he certainly did not get any co-sponsors. Now, when I was a baby legislator and it was my first probably week in office, I remember somebody asking in like a group chat with other legislators, another baby legislator asked, um, does it make a lot of difference how many co-sponsors you have? And yeah, there were all sorts of opinions that popped up, but the one that sort of struck out to me was somebody saying, no, I've had bills pass with one co-sponsor into law. And this bill passed into law with zero co-sponsors. Are co-sponsors important? They can be a signal that a bill is well supported. They can be a signal that there's bipartisan support. If you think there's bipartisan support, you should definitely show it in the co-sponsor list. It can be helpful as far as having more people on board to kind of help do the heavy lifting. But if you're kind of willing to do the heavy lifting, even as somebody who's not in the legislature, um, co-sponsors are not terribly important. This bill being proof positive. Now, I got to tell you, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year, even before I knew that the sponsor was kind of abandoning the bill, if you would have asked me of all the bills that you wrote and helped write this year, which this year was quite a few that I either wrote or helped write this year, which one do you think you're just making a point with? You want to bring awareness to an issue, but it's never becoming a law. I would have pointed to this bill. Okay. I really thought, all right, I don't think anyone else heard this speech by Randy Weingarten except for me. And so I need to highlight this because this could be a problem, like incoming, right? I knew it would probably pass the House. I did not think it was going to pass the Senate, and frankly, it wouldn't have passed the Senate except that. So what happened? What ended up happening after the sponsor kind of abandoned it? It went to House Education for a public hearing, and Representative Noble, who I'm going to have on later in the show, did find another House committee member. Thank you, Mike Belcher. Thank you for being the one willing to introduce this bill in both the House and the Senate, and he did that. And it kind of floated through the House. I'm like, okay, well, let's make the senators aware of what's happening here. Representative Belcher introduced the bill in the Senate. The Democrat on the committee really blasted him for, oh, you have no proof this is actually happening. All you have is a speech. That's silly. And then the American Federation of Teachers president here in New Hampshire got up and said, oh, yeah, no, we have lots of curriculum ready to go in partnership with the World Economic Forum, and we're ready to go. And if she would have just stayed quiet, I should send her a fruit basket because if she had not done that, the bill would have been dead. But the bill is succeeded and became law without signature last week. What does that mean, law without signature? Well, in New Hampshire, the Constitution says that the governor has 5 days upon receiving a bill to either sign or veto. And after those 5 days, the bill becomes law without signature. This is Governor Kelly Ayotte's first term. Previous to that, we had another Republican governor, Kristin, and my memory of Kristin was I don't remember ever seeing a bill that he let become law without signature. But Kelly Ayotte has used that quite a bit. I used to sometimes, honestly, knowing that we were coming up a little bit of a controversial issue that maybe Governor Sununu wouldn't be so thrilled with. I used to, in my mind, beg, just let it become law without signature. But he never did. Well, Governor Ayotte is using that quite a bit. What's the advantage to the governor politically? When they sign or veto something, they usually put out a press release saying what they signed and vetoed. So the press knows. And if they just do nothing, it doesn't get put in a press release. And for the most part, no one notices. And I suppose if they're ever, like, let's say, Governor Ayotte is ever questioned about this in like a debate against a Democrat for governor, she can say, oh, yeah, no, I never signed that. Right. So anyway, that is HB 1448. If you were in any of the other 49 states, I highly recommend looking that bill up and having it introduced in your state legislature. Otherwise, World Economic Forum legislation to create workers of the world is coming to a state near you. Before we get into it with Representative Noble, you've probably heard the headlines by now. RFK Jr.'s pharma audit team has been digging into some uncomfortable questions about common medications, including claims around Tylenol and neurological development. Now, regardless of where you land on that debate, here's the part that should make everyone pause. Multiple studies have raised concerns about acetaminophen. I will figure it out. The active ingredient in Tylenol, the Tylenol one, and its effect on something called glutathione. It's interesting. I always know how to pronounce the body mechanisms, just not the drug names. Anyway, glutathione is your body's master antioxidant. It protects your cells, your brain, and your nervous system from damage. And when glutathione levels drop, your nerves don't fire the way that they should. Signals weaken, repair slows, and that's when people start feeling burning, tingling, numbness, the kind of nerve pain that quietly takes over daily life. And here's the bigger issue. Tylenol isn't the only thing that drains antioxidants from your body. Ultra-processed foods, environmental toxins, chemicals and hygiene products, plastics that we use every day, it all adds up. And most solutions for nerve pain, pills, creams, TENS machines, and so on, they mask the pain. They don't replace what your nerves are actually missing. The good news? There are specific minerals naturally occurring straight from the earth that help restore nerve strength, protect nerve cells, and calm that constant buzzing, burning, and numbness. Scan this QR code or go to myprimal.life/TLL nerve to find out exactly what those minerals are and how they work. Why some people call them miracle grow for your nerves, because when your nerves get what they need, they don't just calm down, they power back up. Something I've been thinking about as we've been having these conversations, it's not just what's happening in our institutions or, in the economy, but what people are actually doing with that awareness. Because I hear from a lot of people who can see what's going on, who understand the risks, the instability, the loss of trust. And yes, yet when it comes to their own savings, their retirement, they're still very much tied to those same systems. And it's interesting because it's not usually lack of understanding. It's more of kind of like a hesitation, that space between knowing something and deciding to act on it. And I think that's something people sometimes look back on later. And so what I'm noticing more and more is that some people are starting to shift their thinking a bit away from trying to predict everything and more toward asking very simply how exposed they really are. And for some, that leads them to explore ways of holding a portion of their savings outside of the traditional financial system, including things like physical gold. I've been speaking with Augusta Precious Metals about this, and what I appreciate is that they really approach it from an educational perspective. They take the time to walk people through how it works, what to consider, and whether it even makes sense for their situation without any pressure. If you want to look into it more carefully, you can go to dailycloutgold.com or text clout to 35052 and request Augusta's free information kit. It's just a way to understand your options more clearly so that if you do make a decision, it's coming from a place of clarity rather than hesitation. Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist, Representative Kristin Noble. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you are a 2-term, soon to be 3rd-term New Hampshire
We'll see.
Representative, much to, I think sometimes you're like, I'm doing it again.
Here we go again. Yep.
But you have been involved in New Hampshire politics since way before you ran for office.
2009, since 2009. Yeah.
Yeah. So what got you started in politics?
So it was during the whole Tea Party thing. My sister, who lived out in Washington at the time, was calling me shortly after Obama got elected, and she's like, "Everything is bad. It's so bad." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I was working at the time. I was not involved in or paying attention to politics at all. So I'm like, okay, let me just look into stuff. And so I did, and I was like, "Oh, geez, okay, maybe she's right." And so when we had that first tax day tea party in Manchester, so I went to that, and then I ended up becoming part of a local 912 group, which was something that Glenn Beck had started. And very shortly after that, that same year is when I found Ron Paul. And I was super bummed that I had missed the 2008 campaign. There's so much that went on in New Hampshire. Um, and so I was very psyched when he decided to run again. So I got really involved with that. And then just like local GOP stuff from there, county GOP stuff. So yeah, that's basically how I got involved.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of knew all about you before you ever became a state rep. I mean, I feel like you're just one of those
Yep.
people that's just been
Been
around.
around for a while. Yeah,
Mhm.
actually did run for state rep once in
Mhm.
2014. So when people still know that you have your signs, that's very dangerous. So I had kept them all these years. I'm like, you spend a lot of money on them. I didn't want to throw it out just in case. But yeah, so people knew that I had those signs and could get a campaign going fairly quickly. And so that's how I ended up back
Still got my
running
sign in
again.
the basement just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
New Hampshire is a 400-person house, so I mean, what's the joke? You've either been a rep, will be a rep, or are currently a rep.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. We all just kind of trade places. So you are the current chair of House Education. You were on the education committee, right away from when you got into the House.
Yep.
Um, what sparked your interest in education?
So when I first got in, it was really around the time where we had just come out of COVID. So the whole masking issue was really big. So the parents that I had gotten connected with were very interested in me being on the education committee. I wasn't sure at the time. I was like watching all the committees to see, what's the right place for me. Um, a lot of people that first year had asked for education. So I didn't end up asking for it because I felt kind of bad that maybe somebody else might want it more than me.
Mhm.
But that's where I ended up anyway. I think it was so popular at that time, like I said, because of COVID. And then also that's around the time when a lot of the woke things were being discovered in the schools. As the kids were learning from home, a lot of that stuff was being found out, by the parents. So
Mhm. That's interesting because this past year we had a hard time getting enough people to be on education because it
yep,
absolutely is the most demanding committee as far as time commitment.
yep.
Um,
It was a little bit better this term because we had split into two.
mhm,
So we have ed funding and then ed policy.
mhm,
Um, I don't know that it will stay that way forever.
mhm.
But it was a little bit easier, sorta.
Sort of, but there were more education bills that ended up going in at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. All right, let's get into some of the legislation. Well, actually, before we do that, you have had now quite a few years to really examine our education system,
mhm,
public education, private, home ed. We got a little bit of everything. Obviously, public education is by far, still the most popular option. Most people send their children to public school.
right.
Um, what What do you think are maybe the most pressing issues in public education? You could just kind of name some things.
So I think one of the big things is that we have terrible academic standards. Basically, we set kids up to fail, especially when it comes to math. We still have that Common Core math going on. I had a bill this year to revamp the academic standards. It ended up getting tabled in the Senate, so they passed it and then immediately tabled it. So I think it just had to do with money because it was a bit costly because they have to go through quite a process to come up with new standards, and then a new statewide assessment has to be developed to go along with those standards. So it is a lengthy, expensive process, but I feel that we should not put another dime into education before we do this. It has to be done. It should have been done years ago. I think that's probably one of the more important things that needs to happen.
So when you say academic standards, obviously I think you're trying to get to Common Core standards because Common Core, that's really what it is at its fundamental, right? Is that
Yes.
it's supposed to be creating certain across the board standards per
Yep.
grade. And how would one go about redoing that and into what sort of model?
So, I mean, I'm really not an expert in that. The DOE would be working on that. So they would look to see what other states are doing as far as that goes. I think that there are states that have really revamped their reading, and I think some people are abandoning that math as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you and I have a lot about Common Core math over
yeah,
there.
I honestly, I think I'm like, as a parent, I'm like scarred by that. It is so awful. And when my daughter was going through it, it was right at the beginning. And I remember her in second grade saying, I can't do this. I feel stupid. And I had already taught her a bunch of stuff. So it was like nowhere near what I had taught her. So it just was not logical to her. And it's not logical anyway. It was terrible. So we had talked with her second grade teacher at the time, and he was like, you know what? Just get me the answer the way that you know how. He's like, you guys should see what I don't give the kids. And so that was years ago. Like, she just turned 20 today, right? So that was years ago. I'm I'm not sure that there are teachers that are saying, just get me the answer the way that you know how. They're or even holding back some of this crazy stuff from the kids. I'm not sure that that's happening anymore. I'm sure it's not, actually. And the funny thing is, when we have had like the community college system and the university system come in and tell us that they have to spend extra money to remediate math when the kids come in. And I will never forget the first time I heard that. And I'm like, I know why.
Yeah.
I know why. Because the kids are not learning the fundamentals in the lower grades. So once they get up to the higher grades and doing more complex math equations, they can't do it. They don't have like that foundation, the foundational skills. So it's a huge problem.
A lack of, and I homeschool my child, and a lot of curriculums have started to move towards Common Core, and what I see is a lack of just basic mastery. At some point, there has to be rote memorization of basic math facts, otherwise
Yes,
you cannot do
you
advanced.
can't. Exactly. Yep.
It becomes way too much of a struggle, and I just don't see enough emphasis
Mhm.
on that. It's almost like there's an aversion to just basic memorization of
Yes.
5 times 5. And
Yep.
I don't really understand it. But what the part that I guess confounds me is that we made the standardized tests follow the Common Core standards, right?
Mhm.
Like, we are it's not that we're, how do I say this? I feel like I'm not articulating it correctly, but it's not that we're just testing them on 5 times 5 and they don't know that what 5 times 5 is.
Mhm.
We are actually testing them on the kind of the nuts and bolts of how they teach Common Core, right? And yet still in all, the kids are failing. And we taught to the test.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I haven't done standardized testing with my 7-year-old yet. If at some point in time we do that, I will be looking for one that is not Common Core standard because I have not taught that. But I don't really understand, like, the tests are the Common Core. You would think they would even if they don't
Right.
understand 5x5, they would at least like know all the things that they've taught them as far as the Common Core, and yet somehow it seems like they didn't, because the scores are not there yet.
Yeah. I don't know. There's all this weird number grid that they used to teach to, and it would always be up in the corner of their work papers. And if it wasn't there, they'd have them write it out. And somehow they use that to get their answers. So I don't know if like that's part of the problem or in the testing, or I don't know. It's
for math. I don't really understand the squares, but I see lots of squares.
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that homeschoolers are using this.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So back in the day when Common Core was first being rolled out, I remember I was still in high school actually when Common Core was being rolled out, and my mother wasn't worried about me, but she was worried about, future generations of homeschoolers. And obviously New Hampshire is the first in the country, presidential primary, and she took one primary season and went around and asked presidential candidates. So if we're now creating these Common Core standards, I assume at some point, like SATs and ACTs are going to have to move to that. And does that leave homeschoolers just like out in the lurch by themselves? And absolutely not a single person could give her an answer. And that is exactly what happened. And so a lot of curriculum have sort of moved towards that. Now, like I use Saxon math. Technically, Saxon is, quote, Common Core standard, in that eventually they get to kind of teaching all those things, not in the same order and not in the same way. But eventually at the end of the day, you're supposed to like know the same things, I guess. But they don't quite do it in the same procedure, but it's still considered to be Common Core standard. But yeah, no, we were doing a different curriculum before, and I did switch because I was like, I'm seeing squares and I don't even understand what's going on. What's happening.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf with Daily Clout. You're not dealing with bad skin as an adult if you have acne. You're dealing with an untreated root cause. It starts small, little redness, a few bumps, then it expands. You may go through the cycle of doctor appointments and trying product after product with no real relief. You're not alone. 25% of adults struggle with acne, and more than 14 million Americans battle rosacea. 1 in 10 people suffers from chronic dermatitis or eczema. These are not just cosmetic issues. They itch, burn, and certainly crush confidence. Store-bought treatments only mask symptoms while ignoring bacteria, mites, and inflammation. And many of these have harsh chemicals that cause severe side effects. Clear Skin Ivermectin cream from the Wellness Company is different. This dermatologist-designed prescription formula targets the root cause safely and gently under the skin. Azelaic acid helps to clear clogged pores and brighten the skin. Ivermectin targets Demodex mites and reduces inflammation. Metronidazole helps control bacteria overgrowth and calms irritation. Stop guessing. Get Clear Skin Ivermectin cream and transform your skin back to normal. Go to Daily Clout Health and use code DailyClout to save $20 off, plus get free shipping.
So, yeah.
There was also, I just remember her being in the 3rd grade and still doing like the number patterns.
Yep.
Like if it's like 1, 3, 5, 7, like what's the next one? So like stuff like that in the 3rd grade, I'm like, you should be learning like division right now. Like what is going on? This is crazy stuff. This is like 1st grade math. So I remember because because I had recently got into politics, and then a lot of people were saying that the Common Core standards are going to dumb kids down. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, I mean, I think they're right. I think they're right.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, sadly.
And yet still in all, they cannot pass the test created for that.
Right.
Which is just, that's the part I find the most concerning. I get it. Teachers moved to, and No Child Left Behind was a total failure. Everyone just went to teaching to the test. And that still isn't working. Even when we then moved the test to make it easier for them to teach to the test, they still are not learning even that. And then we could get into a whole bunch of like our standardized tests, even a measurement about anything, but at the moment, it's all we have.
Right.
So
one of my big concerns when I had put this bill in was, how are we going to get the districts away from the garbage that they're using for curriculum? We had everyday math. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It was one of the worst ones ever. We had it in Bedford, and parents were just screaming constantly about it. Nobody was listening. They did a survey. It was terrible. What came in was parents were just like, get rid of this. Common Core altogether, really. They did, I think, eventually years later end up changing it, but I just saw it from a parent recently. It looks the same as everyday math. So I'm like, how do we get them away from that stuff?
I don't know.
So I did put in a thing that the department would come up with a list of recommended curriculum to. At first, it was a mandate, but I got rid of that. But for them to come up with a list, I think if it's recommended by the department, they will. They're more likely to choose from that list, I think.
Probably. I know that my district, I think it was now 2 or 3 years ago, they did dump Common Core math, and they went to a different curriculum that was not Common Core. It was significantly more expensive because most curriculums are aligned with Common Core. It's actually hard to find. It's rare.
Yeah.
And that makes it more expensive, and the district has to really budget for it. But after the first year, test results were significantly improved.
I'm sure.
And again, the standardized tests are to the Common Core standards, and yet the Common Core curriculum doesn't even teach to it correctly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad we got into that. So you mentioned the school mask bill. That's sort of what kind of got you in here. That was my bill when I was in the House. It got vetoed, and then you really took it and got it over the finish line. How many times did that bill get vetoed? Twice.
So if you count yours, it was 3 times. So I had to do it twice. 2 different governors.
To ban public school mask mandates.
Yep. So I was so happy when we got that through. If you listen to the hearings, and I know that you did, but this time, this last time that we went through, you had people saying like, well, what about the cold? And what if there's norovirus? They were just looking for any excuse to mask the kids again. It's like, no, we have to take care of this. This is really important because they will do this again. And it's wild to me that they don't understand what that did to the kids, but they're all screaming about mental health being a problem. And if you look at what happened to the kids during COVID, of course there's an issue. Of course there's an issue. I mean, where were the school psychologists when all of this was going on? It's mind-blowing to me. And masking wasn't the only thing. I mean, they had kids in the lunchroom separated by cardboard and plexiglass. They had in the schoolyard drawing a line so that the kids didn't mix, that they stayed with their classmates.
Yes.
Not mixing with everybody. So it just wild stuff. It's like, why did we know that this was a problem and they didn't know? Crazy.
It was, and I know you were with me since like right at the very jump of that. And COVID was a litmus test that I will never get past
Mhm.
because, and it wasn't, I mean, it was partisan, but it wasn't also like there were people on both sides that were like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
And then there were people on both sides, you know, being utterly terrified and completely being manipulated and falling for
Yes.
these absurd measures and willing to, I guess the part of it that I'll never get over, you know, a basic tenet of public health pre-COVID was that you protect children no matter what. And we just
Mhm.
like used and manipulated children so badly. We told them that they were going to kill their grandparent by
Yep. Yep. Yep.
child.
Mhm.
We took children and we masked them so that they couldn't even learn how to speak or read. And we really destroyed children, and all for the in the name of saving adults, but that wasn't even true. That was all a lie in
Mhm.
itself. So we
Yeah.
sacrificed them literally for nothing.
Mhm.
And then I'm not saying it's the only part of the mental health crisis amongst children, but it's part of it.
It's
Absolutely.
definitely part of it. Yeah.
I think we
Yep.
took a fire and we just poured gasoline on it.
Yep. I can remember, I mean, it was a hard bill to work on because when you're like reliving that, we had a group text in town with a bunch of moms, and I had texted them when we started talking about mental health and stuff in committee. I had texted them, remind me of some of the stuff that we had gone through. And so it covered like all the different grades, like from the littles up through high school. And after everybody like piped in, I get a text from somebody else that's in the group. And she says, I think I have PTSD. And I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, I'm so upset right now thinking of all this stuff. Like, I think I had forgotten, not forgotten, but like just pushed it out of my head because it was like that traumatizing what happened.
It was.
It's crazy.
It was
And
truly
for
awful.
people to not admit it is what really makes me mad.
They all downplay it now, notice that, right? Well,
Mhm.
we didn't actually mandate vaccines on anyone. You could have not gotten, really, Susan?
Mm,
I don't, I that's not how I remember. Oh, you didn't
right.
actually have to wear a mask. Oh, I
Oh,
remember
okay.
having to wear a mask to walk out of my house. I actually do remember that. And certainly the wars over the children.
Mhm.
I don't know if I ever
Yeah.
told you this, but you know, my daughter was young when all this was happening, and I had a babysitter that did come to the house when I was working, and she came all the way through lockdown and everything. Like she never stopped, and then suddenly 20 like late 2021 she tells me that she needs to wear a mask all the time when she's in my house. And I said, well, if that's how you feel, then you can't work here anymore because I have a child who's learning how to speak and I will not have her
Right. Right.
caregiver not showing their mouth to them. So I understand if that's how you feel, but, and she's like, well, that's my right to do what I want. I said, yeah, and it's my right to not
Yes.
tell you.
Right. Right.
So, but oh, and I actually feel grateful that my daughter was only that age and that she doesn't really remember it. And,
Yeah.
the kids who are just a little bit older asking all these questions, well, how come all these other people wear masks and like, are we doing something wrong? I used to hear those kind of stories all the time.
Mhm.
It broke my heart because it was just so difficult to explain to, you know, a 4-year-old. Yeah, woo, crazy
The
time.
the worst part was seeing, and this still happened even I I want to say both years of last term, we would have parents come in with their kids and the kids are wearing masks and the parents aren't. Or you'd see that at the grocery store
Yeah.
where the parents are not masked but the kids are. And it's because the kids were conditioned to think I have to wear this or I'm going to make people sick or I'm going to get sick.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wild times.
We lied and manipulated children for literally nothing at all.
Yep. Mhm.
All right, some other things you worked on. Obviously, you know, you have been involved in the Education Freedom Account.
Mhm.
That's our school choice program here in New Hampshire. You've been involved in that for quite a bit. Do you want to talk at all about like some of what's happened with our programs? That program got enacted in 2021.
Yep,
but we
prior to me.
expanded.
Yep. Yeah, we expanded it. So last year it went universal with an enrollment cap that increases every year. If we reach the cap, it'll go up another 25%. So that will happen again. So I think that that program's been going really well, despite what you might hear from my friends across the aisle. Parents seem to be pretty happy. Yeah.
Parents, and I got to tell you, the parents who participate are Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a partisan thing at all.
Correct. Correct.
I actually don't really understand why Democrats are hanging their hat so hard against it, because it even alienates some of their own base a bit. They are, I guess, what I find the most funny is that they really try to hang their hat on that it's fiscally irresponsible. Okay. I find very funny because they have absolutely no issue with just freely throwing money at all sorts of things, public education being one of them, which we have seen no return on investment as the cost per pupil. And they love to say that the state does not subsidize, New Hampshire has the lowest state subsidization per pupil of any state, which might actually be true, but we have the second, I think, or third highest per pupil cost of public education in the entire country. We have spared no expense, okay, on public education in New Hampshire at all. How would you respond to the argument that EFAs take money away from public education?
I really think that a lot of people don't understand how much we spend on public education. We had one of those town halls in Milford a few months ago that the majority office does. They need to do more of those, because I think some of the people there were just flabbergasted at how much we spend. So the state spends a little bit over $1 billion. If you include the local taxpayers, it's $4 billion. So about three from local tax property taxes. EFAs is like 50 million. So it's such a teeny tiny fraction of that, and that comes directly from the Education Trust Fund. So we're not taking money away from public education. If you look at any stats, you'll see that enrollment has consistently declined, and we have consistently the funding has gone up and up and up.
Yes, which is how the per pupil cost has gone up. Because despite the fact that we have decreased enrollment and have for quite a few years, we are spending more money. Therefore, every child gets more. And, when the program first got enacted, I didn't even realize how controversial it was until I went door knocking in 2022. And people started attacking me of like, well, there's going to be less money in public schools. And I the first person who attacked me at the door, I was actually legitimately baffled. And I'm like, but we're giving the school the same amount of money. And now there's less that they're educating.
Right.
But
and if the child, if they had left the school anyway, that same amount of money is going with the child. It's not going to the school. So if they chose to go to private school or whatever, homeschool, that money's not going there anymore. But guess what? They still get the local tax money because the parents are still paying in.
That is a great point. So yes, the state money, stops going there when there are less students, but the local money remains. Where does the Education Trust Fund money come from? Because people act, by the way, like it's free money that grows on trees. That the state
yes. The state should just pay for everything. We have tons of money. So there's a few things, and I don't have it right off the top of my head, that make up the Education Trust Fund. You have, I think there's some from like the liquor stores, maybe business taxes, lottery, and then there's the statewide education property tax.
And that's the other thing that people don't realize, is that their property taxes are also paying for that. And they don't quite understand.
It's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that's a huge amount, but
My argument with people when they say,
at
well,
least on your tax bill, that's not
right.
huge.
My argument to people when they say, well, then the state should pay more, because then that would somehow, I don't know, make us number one in per pupil cost. I don't imagine that the localities are suddenly just going to be like, you know what, we're giving you a tax break on your property tax. No, of course they're not going to do that. No. And what the state would probably end up doing is just implementing a new tax of some type, or just raising your property taxes as part of the education trust fund.
Yeah, it could happen. They definitely are looking for an income tax for sure. Even though they like to deny, no, we don't support an income tax. They won't vote against any of the, when we tried to do the constitutional amendment, but they are dying for an income tax to just blow education open. It would be really,
we have the highest education costs in the entire state already, and that is not high enough. And just because this is a national show and not a local show, New Hampshire has no state income or sales tax, and we have the second lowest overall tax burden in the United States, because the only tax that most people are really paying into on a regular basis are their property taxes. And so people will look at the property tax rate and be like, oh, that's so high, but overall still, only, we have the second lowest overall tax burden in the United States, and yet some of the highest public school spending in the entire country. And somehow they think that EFAs are the reason for it, and they have only actually they're only 5 years old.
Yeah, right.
And we already had that kind of insane spending and higher property taxes before that. Kind of going along with that, open enrollment. Now there are plenty of states actually in the country. We're actually, I don't know if we're in the minority that we don't have like a really widespread open enrollment kind of situation, but a lot of states have some type of open enrollment situation. Do you want to kind of talk about where
I feel like we are kind of in the minority of states that offer choice. Our current open enrollment is the voters have to adopt that. And then about 80% of the cost per pupil follows the child to the district, the open enrollment school. We currently only have one. I do think that this coming school year, I've heard that there's about a dozen that have, so back in March, a bunch of districts adopted open enrollment so that they could cut off the kids from leaving. So the current law allows you to set your inbound and your outbound capacity. So they would be like, okay, well, we'll adopt it. We'll take a few kids in, but we're not letting anybody leave. So we had tried to change that. The first complaint was the 80% of cost per pupil. I don't think that we would see a whole ton of moving around with kids. I think you'd see a few, probably kids that are like dealing with a bullying situation or something like that. I don't think you'd see a ton of movement, but people were concerned about that 80% blowing local budgets. So we changed it in a new version to be the charter school funding. So the state would pay, so that adequacy grant that is already going down to the school for them, that would be like doubled and sent to the open enrollment school with the child. We didn't get that through, sadly. That was like another statute that is a hot mess, similar to the homeschool statute that we rewrote. The open enrollment was rewritten as well. So I'll have a bunch of work that's already done for next year. Yeah.
Well, let's go into it. So the Home Education Freedom Bill, I've talked a little bit about it on the show. I contend it would make us into the freest state in the country to home educate. There are other states currently that have no regulations, but this one would have no regulations, but would also really kind of offer some proactive protections for home education parents from
Yes.
DCYF abuse. And that bill, well, we're kind of waiting on, you know, the
Fingers
needle.
crossed. Fingers crossed.
It is headed to the governor. If it's not already on the governor's desk at this moment, it's there any day now. And we shall see. Do you have any thoughts about that bill?
I do think what's really important for people to know is that that statute needed some work, regardless of whether or not you got rid of the regulation. It was a mess, and so were the rules. Kind of, it was like very patchwork, I guess. So it needed some help.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Over the years, that's how statutes are.
Yeah,
They
yes,
kind of become piecemealed.
yeah.
Probably the average person doesn't really even realize how the legislative process works, and that there are a little bite here, a little bite there, and everything.
Yeah.
Change. So yeah, I think we made things a lot more consistent, and hopefully the governor agrees. And
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. That was a fun bill to work on, huh?
Sure, we'll call it that. Obviously, selfishly, I'm waiting for it to be passed. My personal portfolio evaluation is not due till August, and that bill will be effective upon signage at this point.
Right.
So I'm just kind of like waiting another couple weeks before I start worrying about it. But anyway, all right. The last thing I wanted to kind of go through was the school-based health clinic bill, and this is something I worked on a lot together as well. The mask bill, the homeschool bill, and this one. And I came to you with this, like, do you know what's going on?
Yeah.
These health clinics, can you believe it? And I've talked quite a bit about it on this show, but New Hampshire was in this very unique situation where we are the last state in the country to implement school-based health clinics, and we only have one fully functional primary care one, but we have a couple more coming down the pipeline. And so
Manchester for sure. What's the other one?
Manchester, there's one other one. Now I can't remember, but there was another one too. And you put this bill in last year, and we're going to kind of like go through just kind of like the process of what ended up occurring and what might go in the future.
Yep. So we put it in last year. We ended up retaining it.
So we held it over a year.
So we held it and worked on it again in the fall. We ended up taking out the diagnosing. That was the most confusing thing for people. People didn't really understand what a school nurse, like what their scope of practice is. So, or would they still be able to do screenings and all these things? And so it
parsed it out, right?
It became so much easier after we got rid of that. So that it was just prescribing and no prescribing and no surgeries.
Yeah. And I think that created a nice distinction of what already occurs in schools right now, and your average school with a school nurse, like they should be obviously allowed to help a child, with diabetes medications and bandage up the kids even they fall off the jungle gym, things like that, right? Take their temperature.
Take their temp. Yep.
Right. They should. But there needed to be this clear line between what was occurring medically in schools and what occurs with these systems. These are third-party systems. They are coming in and they are doing full scope of practice because they are doctors and not a school nurse. And they're really relying on prescriptions to be able to make their money, essentially.
Yep. So of course it's sold as a convenience for the parents, right? And the kid can just go down the hall to have their annual checkup, or if they're not feeling well, so they make it sound really good.
Yeah.
But it's really, I saw it as a huge danger to the local taxpayers, because depending on what state you're in, these are funded in many different ways. The federal government was giving grants out for these. Manchester ended up getting one. I don't believe they're giving them out anymore. They're still doing payouts for like, so Manchester got 15 million over, I don't know how many few years or something like that. So they are paying that out. I don't believe they're giving new ones anymore. But other states are, they're state funded. Some are locally funded. And then you get into the community schools model. And so this is where your school serves the entire community. So it's not just healthcare. You have like adult classes, or I even found some that do daycare. Not like daycare like they're saying about public school daycare. I'm talking about like little kids, your daycare. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a way that they're going to solve this whole childcare crisis, being too expensive. It's going to be on the backs of the taxpayers. Just drop your kid off at the local school. So they're also doing healthcare for families of students as well. So that,
yeah, some of them, it's supposed to be a one-stop shop, all in the taxpayer's back.
Yep.
For everything. I mean, this is real cradle to grave.
Yes, exactly.
Services. And I think that the federal grants in a lot of cases kind of got them started, but when that money runs out,
somebody's on the hook.
They're just going to get rolled right into school budget. So unfortunately, that bill did not go the distance. It did pass both the House and the Senate, but legislating is difficult, and it is it is a feature, not a bug.
So hopefully with that one is not going to take 3 times. We can bring that one back again for sure.
I think we even got some Democrats on board with that. So even despite however the election turns out, it's possible we really can kind of move that forward, because even they had some real concerns.
True. Very true. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see. Thank you so much for coming on. How can people find you and donate to your campaign? Because you have a campaign.
I do have a campaign. So KristinNoble.com, and it's IN, and you can donate there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Okay. Bye.
Bye. That's it for the Liberty Lobbyist. You can find me on X at Melissa Blasek NH or at Rebuild NH. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always email me, director@rebuildnh.com. Until next time.